The costumes, the hair. There's only one ABBA. And after decades of going their own way, the sweet
ABBA. And after decades of going their own way, the sweet, he wrote the songs that defined a generation. Every melody, every harmony, every unforgettable hook that has ever made a stadium erupt in applause came from his hands. Yet for decades, Benny Andersson hid a truth the world wasn't ready to hear. Behind the glitz of ABBA's golden era, behind the sequins, spotlights, and euphoric audiences, he carried a secret that gnawed at him relentlessly. Alcohol had been his constant companion, the invisible thread weaving through every high, every low, every chart-topping hit. And for years, he had concealed it silently, methodically, behind a smile and impeccable musical genius. It was online in 2011, at the age of 64, that Benny finally revealed the reality. He couldn't function without alcohol during ABBA's rise to global superstardom, every Grammy, every sold-out arena, every euphoric applause. He was drunk through it all. Yet even that confession, raw and haunting, wasn't the most piercing. Benny admitted that the heartbreak-laden lyrics of songs like The Winner Takes It All were not simply about romantic sorrow. They were a shield, a way to navigate life without confronting difficult conversations, a way to pour emotion into music rather than into real life. The weight of that realization that even the most joyous ABBA hits had shadows behind them only deepened the reverence for his craft and the sorrow for the man behind it, Benny Andersson's story begins on a winter morning, December 16, 1946, in the Vasan district of Stockholm. He was born into a household where music was not merely an activity. It was the lifeblood of everyday existence. His father, Gustav, may have been a civil engineer by profession, but in spirit he was a musician. His accordion filling rooms with melodies that lingered long after the notes faded. Even more influential was Benny's grandfather, Ephraim, who commanded the accordion at every family gathering, drawing out traditional Swedish folk songs that echoed through the halls and into the hearts of those present. From the moment Benny could walk, he was enveloped in this world of music. It was never mere background noise. It was a constant breathing presence, a language understood without words. He grew up absorbing rhythms, harmonies, and patterns, storing them deep in his memory. These early years planted seeds that would sprout decades later into global pop phenomena, even if Benny himself could not yet recognize their potential. Everything changed when Benny received his first accordion at the age of 6. To most children, an instrument might spark curiosity for a day or a week before being abandoned, not for Benny. From the very first note, obsession set in. He joined his father and grandfather for evenings filled with folk melodies, each session stretching long into the night. This was no mere play. It was education, immersive and relentless. Through these family sessions, Benny learned that music could narrate stories, express emotions words could not, and build connections invisible yet undeniable, valses, pskas, schottisches. Each rhythm was etched into his very being, forming the foundation of a musical vocabulary that decades later would reverberate in ABBA's songs in ways subtle yet unforgettable. But at 6, he was simply a boy mesmerized by the magic of sound, eager to replicate every note and unwilling to let a single melody escape his grasp. By the age of 10, Benny felt the call to move beyond the accordion. The piano became his new world. A landscape of black and white keys offering infinite possibilities. There were no teachers, no formal instructions, only Benny, the keys, and endless hours of trial and error. He learned by ear, deciphering the notes from songs on the radio and reshaping them into his own interpretations. Rules were irrelevant. Innovation was everything. Day by day, he sculpted his own style, blending the structured logic of classical music with the warmth, soul, and improvisational freedom that folk melodies had gifted him. This experimental, self-guided learning gave him an unparalleled versatility, an ability to traverse musical landscapes with ease. This unique hybrid, nurtured in the quiet hours of solitude, would later become ABBA's secret weapon, giving hits like Dancing Queen and Mamma Mia their indelible charm and emotional resonance. At 15, Benny made a choice that would define his future irrevocably. In 1961, he walked away from school, leaving behind the safety of conventional life for the uncertainty of music. For most teenagers, school represented preparation, discipline, and the structure of growing up. For Benny, it represented a cage, something that kept him from chasing the only path he could envision for himself. He began performing in youth clubs across Stockholm, particularly in the suburbs, honing his craft before audiences who might not yet recognize genius, but instinctively sensed it. He was still young, still inexperienced, yet already there was an unmistakable intensity in the way he approached music. Each performance was not merely entertainment. It was training, a rehearsal for the grand stages that awaited him. Word of his talent began to circulate. Local bands, producers, and fellow musicians took notice of his skill, his flair, his ability to hold a crowd not through showmanship alone, but through the sheer force of his musicality. In a society that frowned upon those who strayed from conventional paths, Benny was reckless, ambitious, and unstoppable. During these formative years, Benny also experienced the complexities of early love and parenthood. He met Christina Granville, a fellow musician, and their connection was swift and undeniable. By the age of 17, Benny was a father to their son, Peter. 2 years later, their daughter Helen was born. While his peers were navigating adolescence and early adulthood, Benny was balancing diapers, late-night rehearsals, and the demands of a burgeoning career. It was grueling, overwhelming, and yet formative. The weight of responsibility forced him to develop emotional depth, resilience, and a keen sense of empathy. Traits that would later infuse his songwriting with profound human insight. The love, guilt, and joy of these early years found their way into his music, allowing him to translate personal experience into universal emotion. Everything shifted in October 1964. Benny, still working a day job as a bank clerk, met Svena Hedlund, lead singer of the popular Swedish band the Hepstars, during an impromptu jam session. Benny's skill on the organ was immediate and electrifying. Within days, he officially joined the band, bringing a rare combination of classical knowledge and raw instinctive energy. The Hepstars were already riding a wave of popularity, but Benny's presence elevated their sound, adding complexity without sacrificing rhythm or energy. By March 1965, the band performed Cadillac on national television in a program called Dropen. Over 1 million Swedes tuned in, captivated by Benny's electrifying organ performance and the band's charismatic energy. Suddenly, the quiet, determined teen had transformed into a national icon. Cadillac sold over 80,000 copies, a staggering number in a country dominated by British and American acts. With each note, Benny's reputation grew. He was no longer just a talented musician. He was a force shaping Swedish pop music itself. Not content with performing, Benny began exploring songwriting. His first original composition, No Response, marked the start of a creative journey that would soon change Swedish music forever. By 1966, Sunny Girl became his first major hit, topping charts and selling over 50,000 copies. Its delicate melancholic undertones captured the uniquely Swedish essence of longing and melancholy. Each song carried traces of Swedish folk rhythms, classical influences, and contemporary pop sensibilities, a synthesis that few musicians could achieve. The world heard joyous singable hits, but beneath the surface lay intricate structures and emotional nuances that spoke to Benny's lifelong dedication to music. His compositions were both personal and universal, reflecting his own experiences while inviting listeners to find their own stories within the music. It was a balance few artists ever master. And Benny achieved it naturally, a result of years spent learning, failing, experimenting, and refining his sound. As ABBA's fame skyrocketed, the pressures of international stardom began to weigh heavily. Touring, recording, interviews, and media scrutiny created a relentless cycle, leaving little space for personal reflection or recovery. Benny's dependency on alcohol, which had been manageable in smaller settings, intensified under the relentless pace of global fame. While colleagues and fans saw a composed, brilliant musician, Benny battled exhaustion, insecurity, and self-doubt behind the scenes. It was a paradox of visibility and isolation, adored by millions, yet profoundly alone in facing his struggles. The music, however, remained consistent, vibrant, and emotionally powerful. Benny's ability to channel pain, joy, and human complexity into his work was remarkable, producing songs that have endured decades beyond their initial release. The dynamics within ABBA further shaped Benny's creative journey. Collaborating closely with Bernatha and Enid required emotional intelligence, negotiation, and trust. Benny's melodies often dictated the mood and tone of a song, while Byrne's lyrics provided narrative direction. The interplay between melody and story became their hallmark, with Benny's musical intuition translating raw emotion into notes that resonated across cultures. But the collaborative process was not without tension. Creative differences, personal relationships, and the weight of expectations sometimes created friction. Benny's internal reliance on alcohol offered temporary relief from stress, but it also complicated interactions and introduced emotional distance. Despite these challenges, the group's cohesion and shared vision allowed them to maintain artistic excellence, producing albums and performances that remain iconic today. One of the most striking aspects of Benny's journey was the way personal experiences directly influenced ABBA's music. Songs such as The Winner Takes It All were infused with real-life emotional complexity, often inspired by relationships, heartbreak, and unresolved feelings. Benny's honesty in composition, his ability to translate personal struggle into universally relatable music, elevated the songs beyond mere pop. They became narratives of human emotion, capable of eliciting tears, nostalgia, or joy from listeners worldwide. Yet, this transparency came at a cost. While fans connected deeply with the music, Benny often had to confront his own vulnerabilities privately, reconciling the emotional intensity of his art with the realities of his personal life. His struggle with alcohol, once a private coping mechanism, was intertwined with his ability to sustain the relentless output required of ABBA's global success. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, ABBA's influence reached unprecedented levels, albums topped charts in Europe, the Americas, and beyond. Concerts were theatrical events complete with elaborate costumes, choreography, and stage design. Benny's compositions were the backbone of each performance, their complexity and beauty underpinning the visual spectacle. Yet, as public success grew, private pressures mounted. The constant travel, performance obligations, and media attention left Benny increasingly reliant on alcohol to navigate the demands of fame. It was a delicate balance. Alcohol as a crutch allowed him to perform, to create, and to maintain outward composure, but it simultaneously deepened the isolation and emotional turbulence he faced in his personal life. Few outside the inner circle could perceive the depth of this struggle. And even Benny himself remained silent for decades, protecting both his image and the perception of ABBA's flawless success. Beyond the challenges of substance reliance, Benny's life was shaped by relationships and personal commitments. The early lessons of young parenthood, love and responsibility, remained central to his character. His family, both immediate and extended, provided grounding and inspiration, even amid the whirlwind of fame. Music for Benny was always inseparable from human experience. Joy, sorrow, responsibility, and love infused every note he wrote. The duality of public success and private struggle became a defining tension in his life, influencing not only the content of ABBA's songs, but also the way Benny navigated fame and creativity. Through it all, his dedication to musical excellence never wavered. Each composition reflected careful attention, emotional depth, and an understanding of the human condition. Qualities that ensured ABBA's songs would endure long after the era of disco and glitter passed. In 2011, Benny Andersson's candid revelation about his dependence on alcohol brought a new understanding of ABBA's history, speaking publicly about his struggles for the first time. Offered insight into the personal cost of global fame. The revelation was both shocking and deeply humanizing, a reminder that even the most celebrated artists carry private burdens unseen by the adoring public. Benny's honesty illuminated the relationship between his art and his life. The music that inspired millions was forged not only from talent and discipline, but also from vulnerability, struggle, and resilience. By acknowledging his dependence, Benny completed a long arc of personal honesty, giving fans and historians a more nuanced understanding of the man behind the music. Even at 78, Benny continues to reflect on the journey that carried him from a music-filled childhood in Stockholm to the global stages of fame with ABBA. The melodies, harmonies, and rhythms that once resonated only within the walls of his home now echo worldwide, immortalized in timeless pop classics. His life story, marked by early genius, personal struggle, creative triumph, and eventual candor, serves as a testamento of human complexity and the transformative power of music. Each note he wrote,